the host.
Who's my knuckle? I meant to ask a question though. What if I mess up?
There's no messing up. You're just talking about yourself. How are you going to mess up talking about yourself?
What if I fumble words?
That's fine.
Okay.
Take it easy. Like, it's a conversation we're having. Don't worry about it.
Okay.
All right, here we go. In 3. You're listening to Consulting Logistics, presented by Aborn and Company. I'm your host, Kyle McNaught. Thanks for checking us out. Today's going to be a fun one. As you can see, I have a particular individual sitting next to me who in no way knows anything about freight, logistics, transportation, or any of that. In fact, it's one of our kind of SCUs, supply chain under 30, but it's even weirder than that because Hayley Mason, right?
Yes.
Is our summer intern for 2020. So the coronavirus intern sitting right here, and she's about to wrap it all up. So we're going to have a fun conversation with her. We're going to talk about sort of her education, what her experience was like, and what she thinks is going to happen kind of going forward. So be ready for those quizzes right now. So Hayley, how's it going?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. A little full disclosure, you helped me set this all up. We've been talking the entire time through this. So it's going to be a fun conversation, but hopefully you're not shy and awkward at any point during this. Otherwise, I'm going to have to report it to your school.
Okay, I'll do my best. I'll do what I can.
Good. Hayley, let's talk a little bit. Let's start off with the fun thing. You had one of the most unique intern experiences, I think, ever, especially because of coronavirus, because how you started, you joined this. First of all, the thing I want to talk about is your major, what you're going to school for. Tell the audience a little bit about that and kind of a little bit about yourself, kind of where you're from, what school you're going to college-wise, and kind of what your major is and what you're trying to pursue.
Okay, so I'm originally from Bridgewater, Massachusetts. I'm a rising sophomore at the University of Massachusetts-Amherst, and my major is actually neuroscience on a pre-PA track. So I plan to go to school after school and hopefully graduate and be a PA.
There we go. So how the hell did you end up in logistics? You're in neuroscience. What brought you here?
Well, I am family friends with Steve Aborn here at Aborn Company, and he needed help with a special project that Aborn is working on. And so he was like, "What are you doing this summer? Like, can we get you on this project?" And I was like, I am doing absolutely nothing. I'm sitting in my house, much as the rest of the country is doing, and I would love to help in any way that I can. So that's how I ended up here.
But even before that project, you and I started working together because as I've talked about, I'm a recent father. I was having a kid during coronavirus, so that was all fun. So originally, you jumped on the neuroscience to help the dumb marketer out with some of the projects I had, especially when I was going to be away with my child, my firstborn. So talk a little bit about that experience, because I thought that was super unique and kind of not cool. It sucks, right? You didn't get to finish your freshman year of college, but what was it like? What was coronavirus? What were you being communicated? And then for you to pick up another job, talk about like that a little bit. How was that experience?
Right. So I was still in school. I started here in March. Steve was like, "We need some help. Like, our marketing guy is having a baby. Like, you need some help." I'm like, "I would love to do it. I'm more than happy to help." So that's when I met you, and we worked all through Windstream or Zoom or whatever you call it. And that was how I learned to do everything, how I learned to use the programs we use for marketing. And we recorded them, and I watched them probably over 50 times just to get the hang of everything. But it was definitely difficult in the beginning, learning a new job, working in a new field that I didn't really know that well, and juggling school at the same time because I was still in classes. However, not real. Those classes may have been on Zoom, but technically I was still in school. So I was juggling both at the same time, but it was enlightening and definitely like a great challenge that I loved to take on, and it's been one of the best opportunities that I've had in my lifetime.
Jeez. Well, to be fair, it's very short.
In all my 19 years.
Killing it. What about, so when Steve kind of came to you, what did you know about logistics? What did you know about transportation? Or was it just like semi-trucks? Like that's all you knew?
Honestly, I knew that I didn't like to drive by trucks on the highway because they scared me. That's the extent of what I knew in trucking and logistics. And that was daunting in the beginning because I was like, I'm gonna screw everything up. I don't know anything about anything. Like, I don't know what I'm doing. But I asked a lot of questions, as you well know.
Yep,
I asked
sure.
a lot of questions, and everybody here was more than supportive and more than happy to answer any questions that I had. Like, yourself included, Steve, Jill, they were always like, we'll help you in any way that we can. Like, and that's how it was. I would email them all the time. They're probably sick of me. But I asked a lot of questions, and that's how I got through, because I honestly did not know anything about anything in logistics.
But like I found it, especially because I was more in the same with not coronavirus and not all that stuff. But like I started without having a real deep knowledge of the industry and stuff. And I felt like the first week was probably one of the most daunting ones, when you're like, what, people aren't saying like words, like they're just going through there. But I felt like I was learning kind of rather quickly. Did you kind of experience that, or what was it like for you? Especially just given that you're younger, you're kind of more used to researching and stuff like that. How did you kind of find, other than just emailing us being like, what the hell does this mean?
Yeah. Well, there's definitely a lot of acronyms, which I had to look up every single one on the internet. My search history is all trucking and logistics because I'm like, what is EDI? What is API? Like, all stuff like that. But I think a big part of it was a lot of what I do for our newsletter that we have is looking at articles, and I would just read and read and read. And the more I read, the more I understood. And that's how I kind of started to understand what I was doing and understand everything that was going on. And also the webinars that we were doing during coronavirus. I sat through them. I said nothing, but I sat through them, and I got a good understanding because it was different people in different aspects of the field that were speaking on what they were experiencing. And that was a huge help for me to understand what I was doing and what I was working on.
Yeah, you're referring to, we were doing coronavirus roundtables. We were bringing shippers. We were trying to kind of get everyone who's kind of within this industry to sort of an online virtual meeting and just talk about their issues and stuff like that. And you assisted me. You ran it one time yourself when I was in the hospital. But yeah, I mean, that was a fun experience. It was kind of cool bringing you along and kind of getting you up to speed on the stuff. You absolutely were 100% all on board, which was interesting. I mean, as a neuroscience, I would expect you to kind of find some of this stuff's boring, but like, what did you find interesting about it? At least right at the beginning, because I want to eventually get into that special project without naming names of what it was. But I definitely want to talk about that. But like at the beginning, what were you finding interesting? Other than you're just amazing manager.
My manager, my bosses, they're all very amazing. But as far as the industry is concerned, I think, well, I came into it at a specifically interesting time because I came in during coronavirus when everything was everywhere and no one knew what was going on. No one knew what the next day was going to bring. But I think for me, it was just like the supply chain itself and like the supply and demand of everything, and like the whole like toilet paper like wasn't in stores, like you couldn't find it anywhere, and like shipping in that sense, because I was always on the end of it like, I'm ordering like something off Amazon, like it's coming tomorrow. But like, how does it get from wherever it came from to my doorstep in one day? Or however else, like how does a truckload of something get to a grocery store in like the amount of time that it does? And something's restocked, like the toilet paper is restocked and be gone in a day. Like, how does the supply chain keep up with all of that? And like, how are things in stock all the time? And I think that that was the most interesting part for me, was like the supply and demand aspect of everything. Like, how is it like that?
That's what sold me too. Like, I remember doing my interview process with Steve. I'm like, what interests you about this? He's like, you can go to the grocery store and see like product that you helped get on that shelf.
Right.
And like you understand how it got there. It's a really cool kind of experience. I mean, we work with alcohol distributors too. So I get to I'm like, cool, this is fun to see. Like I get all this stuff. But yeah, I totally get that. What about marketing? I mean, did you find any of the stuff we were doing fun, or what was your experience there?
I loved everything about marketing, honestly, to the point where I looked into marketing.
Nope, don't do it.
UMass Amherst.
You're in neuroscience. Stick with that. Stick with the smart stuff.
Can I do this? Like, is this possible? But I loved like the designing. I think like a lot of what we did with the website, like a lot of what we did with like headers for our podcast or our blogs that we were putting out, like I just loved working on it. And it was like time I would put into it and hours would go by and I'd be like, oh my gosh, I've been doing this for 2 hours now. Like it was just time that flew by because I enjoyed working on it and enjoyed looking into like the marketing aspect of everything. And I had never experienced anything like that before. All I knew was science, to be honest.
Right. Maybe so, like at least look at the positive, like a positive outcome of coronavirus, would you at least get to have some experience in that?
Right.
Because your design work was amazing. I mean, a lot of, especially listeners to Consulting Logistics, probably have noticed the changes in sort of like our thumbnails, our headers, like a lot more artistic images coming out of us. It's all her. She's the one who's doing all that. And yours truly this summer. What about some of the platforms we use? Like, I know it'd be interesting, like, what did you think about that? Like some of the social stuff we were using, some of the technology, was it a barrier for you or are you just so used to using online tools that it was kind of simple for you to kind of pick up?
I think that I've grown up in a generation that's very fortunate as far as technology goes because we open something up and it's almost like in a day, you know how a program works. Like just because we've grown up with it, like we get a new app every couple or so months and we know how to use it in like a couple of days. Like just things like that. At first I was like, oh my gosh, like a bunch of new programs. But even like we work with Canva, we work with MailChimp, like those programs were like easy to me to like get used to and to know where everything was. And it's like not hard for me to search around for something if I don't really know where it is, just because I've grown up and that's been my life since I can remember, to be honest.
Right.
I can't remember really a time that I didn't have technology. So.
Yeah. Oh man. It's funny. I'm finally getting old enough that I'm like, oh man, I really am going to speak my age if I tell you like this, but even though I feel like I'm young at heart. But what about something that surprised you in terms of being antiquated? I mean, did you find any of the stuff we were doing? I mean, this is kind of your first, not saying big job or anything like that.
Definitely.
So like what surprised you? I mean, a lot of like, I'm sure you watched The Office and stuff. What was like the difference? And given the fact too, I know you hounded me for a while, like, when do I get to go in the office? I'm like, calm down. It's Rona crazy right now. You don't want to be in here. But what surprised you? What was something that you felt like, man, this is kind of slower than what I normally deal with in the regular day to day?
I think, well, I was really nervous to come to the office for the first time. We have a bell on our table when we walk in, and I rang the bell because I didn't know where I was going. But I think it was more like we sat in a conference room, like, to work on the project we were working on, and, like, meeting everyone was, like, really interesting. I worked in a restaurant, and I was a nanny. Like, I never had, like, a big, like, real person job, basically.
9 to 5, go in the office. Yeah.
So I think like it was a big deal for me to like come in and like sit down at a desk and like do my work and like have coworkers that like were around all the time and like working with people, just like collaborating. I never really had that sort of like experience. And it's really fun telling people I work in an office. I'm like, oh, like my office job, I have to go. Like, sorry, you guys.
This is the deal when you're 19. You're excited about this. When you hit 32 and you're like, I got to go in the office. And the corona's kind of nice. I can work from home.
Yeah.
But what about the stuff that like surprised you? I mean, technology wise, were you expecting more high tech or was like you kind of matched sort of what your expectation levels were?
I think it matched my expectations. Like I work out of my laptop and like that's like the easiest thing for me to do too, because I know how to use it and I know how to use the programs on it. So I think it definitely like matched what I was expecting. I didn't really, as far as like the building, I was not expecting what I thought. I pictured The Office, like actually, like the show The Office, that's what I imagined.
Yeah.
But I think as far as like the technology goes and like what we use day to day, like I was like prepared for it, which I didn't know I would be.
Yeah, I know that's one of the interesting things. I think that like you're starting to see that, not to make this a year generation thing, even though this has been like the third joke I made within the questions, but it is something that I'm starting to see more and more is that like you're walking in recognizing like, hey, I got my technology. I'm going to do my job with my technology. I don't need to learn this stuff. Right. Or even if I do need to learn it, you at least recognize the whole user interfaces stuff. Like user experience matters to you because it's what you're going to do to learn this platform. So the easier it is, the quicker you can move on to something. So that was marketing stuff. However, you halfway, kind of not halfway, but quickly you got put into a special project, which we won't name and stuff like that, but that was truly logistics work.
Right.
So let's talk a little bit about that. How was that when you kind of were explain what you were going to do? What was that like? What was your mindset when you're like, oh man, I'm really like, I was working with Kyle and we just kind of talked about this stuff. Now I actually have to do it.
It was so difficult at first. It's very data heavy. The project we work on is very data heavy. That's what we look at all day, every day for 9 hours, like on the days that I'm on that project. But it gave me like kind of a sense of like importance, because I knew what I was doing was like important to people outside of just like myself and just like this company. Like it's bigger than this company.
Right.
It's bigger than like anything that one individual could be without.
You were truly working the supply chain.
Right.
Like everything
exactly.
you were saying. Like it was all theory when it was with me, but now you actually finally got to get push in and like, here we go. I'm working the supply chain, getting this thing
Right.
going. So the data aspect of it, how much, like, given your more scientific background, how were you prepared for this? Was it like a mind-blowing, like, I think a really cool thing, at least from my point of view, is like you got some real world experience. And now when you go back to school virtually, you're going to like get to see sort of like, you're going to have this homework, you have these assignments, but you're like, oh man, I know what it's like in the real world, where it's like 9 hours of looking at this stuff.
Right.
Like, what was your experience, or what did you think about that kind of experience?
I think the quantity of it shocked me, because it's such a large like project that we were working on, and there's so much being shipped, so much coming in, so much going out, like going to so many different places too. Like the things I had worked on were smaller. Like the data that I worked with was smaller, because it would be like a lab or something like that, and it's data that you create yourself.
Right.
But this is coming in from so many carriers, so many shippers, and that was like the quantity and like just the massive amount of things that were being shipped to and from, and it was out of control. Like I thought it was crazy.
How'd you explain it to your friends?
That's a good question. I think that they still don't know. I just say that I go to the office and I call myself a data analyst. So that's what I tell them.
You gave yourself a title and you made it seem like you're going to the office.
Yeah, I did.
So it's interesting. Like definitely the quantity and the amount that you're moving, it's super complex and stuff like that. Yeah. But it must have been kind of fun and like to see how complex the real world is. I think that's one of the things that always like surprised me when I was like, oh man, I'm like, how do you get green beans in a restaurant? Right. Like, how do you get like milk, which has the shortest shelf life you could think of?
Yep.
And you're like, how the hell did they get it here in the first place? Like, then it's spoiled in my fridge in a day. I'm like, what the hell? How does this work?
That like aspect of the whole project was crazy. I just didn't think before I started working here about what got where and how it got there. And then I started working here and I was like, I appreciate everything that's on the shelf now. I'm like, I know how much work somebody put in to get this here.
Like, I'm never going to be mad at like the Amazon delivery ever again.
Honestly, that was the biggest thing. Like something I ordered like was like on back order or whatever. And I was like, don't worry about it. I understand your struggle.
Oh, yeah. I think I was recently going through something where my father was pissed because he tried to ship me something. I was like, it's fine. I'm like, I get how difficult it is. I'm like, you have a unique package and everything. I'm like, the dimensions are all wrong, Dad. He's like, he's like, what are you talking about? I'm like, oh, don't worry about it. Yep. What about the technology you're using with the data stuff? I mean, how difficult was it to kind of crunch that type of stuff? How difficult was it to be kind of a data analyst all of a sudden?
It was, those programs are similar to programs that I've used before. So as far as like using the program, that wasn't hard, but translating the information was the hardest part, because you're getting information from one source and you have to put it into another source and they're completely different. Right. And sometimes you get multiple of one or multiple of another. And I think that was like the hardest part, in finding good information with tons of information, because you get a lot of info, but not all of it's good data, and you need the good data because that's what's important.
So were those programs stuff you've used in college, or is this like a high school thing?
Definitely. I used them a lot in college, and I think I might have used them a little bit in high school, but mostly like college I used them because we used just about everything. So that was easy.
Nice. So what's your plan when you go back to college? Are you going to be bragging about like this internship in supply chain? Or are you going to start trying to take some courses in there? Or what's kind of like on the future for you?
I definitely want to look into it. Especially like, I think you can double major. I did look into it. I think you can double major and I did like it. I think I would double major in marketing more so than the supply chain.
Aww.
But
marketing any idiot can get, trust me.
But I think it just like gave me a greater appreciation and it gave me experience that I never would have got otherwise, and made me a more well-rounded person, to be honest.
Oh, geez, we didn't know we were life-changing. We didn't know we were doing the Sandlot. Do you even know that reference, the Sandlot?
Yes, I do know Sandlot. I do it.
Convince someone. Tell someone your age why they should try to take an internship in logistics or in transportation. Tell them why. Speak their language. You are a youth, after all. What is fun about this? What is so engaging about it? Why was this worth your summer? Money.
No, I'm just kidding. I think it was just like an experience that you wouldn't expect. Like, it was nothing I had ever been trained for and nothing that I knew anything about, but it was something that I could come into. As long as you put the effort in, you can learn anything. And it gives you, like, it makes you a better person. It makes you a better applicant for things you're doing in the future. It makes you like stand out amongst other people who maybe scooped ice cream all summer or something, but you were an intern, you learned the ropes, you got real life experience, and you could meet some incredible people. And I think that was a big part, is I met some incredible people and some really great people here.
Oh, you're being too kind. You have questions for me? Let's flip this. Like, I know that I was more or less like your part-time manager. You had another one too, but like, what questions do you have? Like, what do you think? Anything for me?
I think the biggest thing would be like, I know you came in here with not a logistics background as well. And I would say, like, would this be something that you want to stick with and you want to work in marketing with logistics? Or is there like something else that you would prefer to spend your time on or want to spend your time on in the future?
God damn. Why are you giving me a hard one?
Sorry.
I thought you really talk about me and how good I was. No, it's interesting, right? I'm driven by story and stuff that's fascinating to tell. I think the logistics industry right now is going through so much fun, different, fast, like huge changes, which are so much fun to learn. And it's another thing that like you say, right? You can kind of feel connected a little bit more than you would anything else. Now, granted, I came from a nonprofit where we were talking about like saving lives. So like there's like just the differences in story and stuff like that. For me, a lot of what I'm learning, most of my background was video, stuff like that. So it's been very fun to kind of be in marketing itself. Like usually I would create the video and then hand it off and hope someone would market it properly for me. But now I kind of get to be the person who's doing that behind the scenes. It's fun, and especially here at Aborn, we're definitely growing. So it's fun to see that kind of experience, learn, kind of go from there. I think, like you said, though, you can get very quickly caught up in the industry, and now it's fun. And I've said fun like 25 times, but it's now's the real challenge, real adventure begins. Like my first year was sort of trying to learn about all this stuff. And now I'm finally like being able to like actually have opinions and points and think about how I would tell this story because a prospect came in and is dealing with X, Y, and Z problems. And then how do we want to address their problems and how do we want them to feel connected to what our solution is? It's also, I'm learning our solution and the differences behind all that stuff. So the industry is definitely, it's fast moving. It's a ton of energy and it's just something that I like being in right now. So who knows where the future takes me? That's always the problem, right? Sure. It's as much work and it's how much energy am I going to have to keep up with the ever changing kind of environment that is marketing. Again, why I'm telling you neuroscience, stick with that. What else?
I would say, how did you like having, because you had 2 interns this summer.
I did.
How did you like having the interns and how did you like the teaching aspect? Because you taught us, your other intern is a marketer and communications, but I am not. So how did you like teaching someone that knew nothing and was eager to learn?
I think you stood out because of how eager you learned. Our other intern, she's a marketing assistant, so it was kind of different. But she knows marketing, so it was a whole different conversation with her, which is also as fun as with you. I've always enjoyed internships. I've always liked it. I got my start with an internship. I view it as use it to learn. So what I've always tried to do is give interns as much responsibility, as much experience as possible so they can do what you did. Like, holy, I kind of like this marketing stuff. I'm going to see if I can't double major in this, or I'm going to look into what the future could be. I always say like, hey, I'm going to give you an assignment. If you hate it, that's great. This is what you know not to go into. Yep. So I always tried to do that type of stuff. You were extremely patient. You were extremely eager to learn, and you asked questions, which is the only thing you can really ask for. And the other thing is you actually wanted to do stuff. Yeah. So that was the other thing. You were bored as hell at home, bored of the house, but you actually want to do work, which is the only thing you, as an intern. I mean, if there's interns listening or people your age listen to this, I mean, that's the thing. Want to do work, and then the people are going to want to give you work. You listened to, which was one of the more important things. We had to record our lessons, but you listened, and I didn't have to repeat myself all the time. Yeah. Which is one of those like frustrations that I see a lot. Not everyone's going to have the patience. A lot of people are concerned. I've always heard, or I forgot where I heard it, but basically it's like if you can't teach, it means you don't know what you're talking about. Mm-hmm. So I try to approach it as like, be eager to teach. If you don't know, that's fine. And just let them kind of join the journey that you're learning with.
For sure. I think that's all I got for you.
You wrote down 2 questions, huh? You had those written. Hayley, it's been so much fun. Again, you were extremely energetic, so much fun. Any other intern that would have come in, I think like you came in when I was like 3 weeks from my due date. I was like, great, This is wonderful. Like I get someone who's never experienced this industry, not interested in marketing is my intern, but you were so much fun. You were so interested. You took the time. You really wanted to like be a part of this. And like, if you can bring that to anything you're going to do, you're going to be a successful kid. So thank you so much for being my intern for the summer of 2020. Corona summer 2020. It was a blast to have you as an intern. And I hope that if you want to try marketing again next summer, you're coming here or you're going into Boston and going to one of the big marketing agencies and seeing what they actually run it like. But yeah, I hope we're staying in touch and everything like that.
For sure.
So for me, thanks for jumping on Consulting Logistics and giving me a podcast I don't have to figure out how to record this week.
Perfect. I loved being here. I've learned so much. I could not be happier with how I spent my summer, and I honestly just feel lucky because it was luck that I got here. And sure. Coronavirus was my luck for this summer.
Yeah, but you work too hard to just say it's luck. You are an excellent worker and someone that anyone out there, put this on their LinkedIn. Like, you definitely want to bring Hayley onto your team for sure. Now get to work on editing this for me, okay?
All right, I'll get on it.
Hayley, I guess the one quick thing before we leave. How can people kind of get in contact with you on LinkedIn that I forced you to make?
Yes, I am now on LinkedIn, so you can find me there, Hayley Mason. And that's the best way to get in touch with me.
Yeah, just include it in the links in the show notes when you're done with this.
Yeah, when I put it all together, I'll make sure to put it in bold letters.
I just want to make sure this went long, so you had to write up all of this and remember what you said.
I know it keeps going. I'm like, there goes like, my whole day tomorrow.
All right, we'll wrap up then. Hayley, thanks for joining me today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Of course. See ya.
Bye.
And that's our show. A huge thank you to Hayley. In the meantime, subscribe and share our show. Thanks for watching Consulting Logistics. I'm Kyle McNaught. Rock and roll.